people get mad when I say that, but your kids, no matter how smart you think they are, they're dumb and they will be tricked. You give them a phone, somebody's going to reach out, they're going to trick them, and they'll talk your kid right out of that house. And then they'll physically take them, or they'll infiltrate your family's life, and before you know it, your kid's giving a credit card number away, giving Venmo accounts, and now they're draining your stuff. We see a lot of that going on.
Today we talked to a guy named Jared Hudson. Now, Jared's a local guy to Birmingham. We go through his journey, crazy journey. He grew up here in Birmingham. He was a Navy SEAL. We go through a lot of in-depth. So if you don't know anything about Navy SEALs, this is a really, really good episode to listen to because he goes through the first half of the episode about those details. It's really, really kind of fascinating. And then we talk about the company that he founded, Covenant Rescue. What they do is they help prevent sexual predators, and they go do sting operations. They work with local government to do this. This is one of those eye-opening episodes that we've ever had. Jared goes in massive detail about how as parents we can help mitigate these issues, but also the things that they're doing to help stop this just what it is. It's sin that's in our society. You are absolutely going to love this episode with Jared Hudson. Jared, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, bro.
All right, so Jared Hudson, here's the background I know about Jared. So we're both from Birmingham. He lives in Gardendale. I live here in Birmingham and Trussville. So I saw a clip of him, but I also knew your name because you ran for sheriff 2 years ago.
I did, yeah.
Sheriff of Jefferson County.
I got sheriff runner-up.
Sheriff, that's right. That's right. I was
my dad's like, hey, how many people were in that race?
That's right. Yeah. So I knew of Jared, but then started going down the rabbit hole of what he does. And I sat there with my wife and told my wife, I said, I am more excited about talking to this guy than I have in those probably close to 70 episodes that we've done, just because you're an owner, but you also are an owner for a business that changes lives on the grandest level, in my opinion. So I just want to get right into it. So Jared, give me a little bit of background about you, where you're from, all that, and we'll get into like what you're doing now later on. But like who are you and where are you from?
So, I mean, you said my name is Jared Hudson, from here in the Birmingham, Alabama area, a little bit north of Birmingham. Grew up here, played ball here, went to Mormon Jordan High School, played football, hunted, fished, all that stuff.
Yeah.
A normal North Jefferson guy, and then wound up going to fire college, becoming a firefighter for a short amount of time, actually just down the road over here at Cahaba Valley Fire District.
Yeah.
And went on a mission trip with the church, my church at the time, Gardendale First Baptist, and just felt the Lord calling on that mission trip to do something different. I wound up joining the military and going to SEAL teams. So that was kind of my track, starting off here and then leaving North Jefferson, Alabama.
So that was the fastest intro in the history of the Owner's Tables podcast. I love it. That was great.
Yeah, this is one thing I believe, and I'll say that, I'll just say it now.
Yeah.
The most important thing about me, I mean, we know that the flesh is a shadow of the things to come. The spiritual is most important. Maximus says, he says, what you do in this life echoes in eternity. He almost got it right.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome. Yeah. How you transact with Christ in this life echoes in eternity.
Right.
And that's the most important thing about me, because if I go out here and get shot in the head when I walk out this door and I die, I hope I'm still a Christian. I hope that I'm right on that.
Yeah.
And we do have that hope in the person of Jesus
Amen.
Christ.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing about me. All the other stuff about me, at least growing up and everything,
Just stats.
it's just stats, and it's like nobody, they used to do this thing in buds, you show up, hey, tell us where you're from. All these guys saying, tell us where you're from too. And as you start to say it, oh, I'm Jared Hudson, I'm from there, nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Because nobody cares,
Yeah. So did you go to college after high school?
I did. So after high school, I went to fire college, and then I went to EMT and paramedic school.
Yeah.
And then when I was waiting to go into the Navy, I did a few classes and basically finished about 2 years of school.
Yeah.
So, and then I had 2 years left when I was in the military. I used tuition assistant, got a bachelor's in, while I was in the Navy. So I was, yeah. So I got a bachelor's in business, right? That was my business degree. And then when I got out of the Navy, I finished my master's in business. I got an MBA.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So the Navy SEAL thing is fascinating just simply because it's been glorified. I mean, like, it's been glorified on
Probably
TV.
glorified too much, but
So that was one of the things I was going to ask is, so when you join the Navy, do you join the Navy and then you can go join the Navy SEAL? I mean, like,
that's a good question. So basically, previous to probably like 2004, 2005, that's the way it was.
Okay.
I believe it was 2005 that George Bush opened the contract for Special Operations Command. The reason is because the 20 years of war we've been fighting have been waged pretty much primarily by Special Operations Command. Those are the ones who are actually going out fighting. Doesn't mean that some conventional fighters, there's a lot of Marines who did a lot in Fallujah, did a lot in Helmand Province. I'm not saying that conventional fighters didn't fight, but the Special Operations community was heavily leaned on. So in 2005, they saw the need for that, and they upped the opportunity, I guess, or up the ante to get guys in Special Operations community. Had contracts for SEAL, Ranger, SF, Marine Recon, all of those. You could go to the Air Force PJ and you could go get a contract. So I went in under contract. Now you go through a screener process. You have to be approved for it. So I think when I screened those 300 guys here in the state of Alabama that screened for a...
Screened meaning like, is screened a new word for tryout?
Yeah, just tryout.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you do a physical test. You do a written, like your ASVAB score has to be so high. So that screener process, about 300 dudes was in that process here in Alabama when I went through it. And I think it might have been Alabama and Mississippi together.
Sure.
There was 300. And of that, they contracted 7 of us. So that's your first, and of the 7 of us they contracted, at that time when I contracted, I was the only one from the Alabama, Mississippi region that made it. That
wow.
Made it. So they contracted 7 of us, and I actually went, and that's SEAL contract.
So you go do that test. You're one of the 7. From there, where did it go?
Went to, we had a delayed amount of time. You sign up for the Navy through just like you normally would.
Yeah.
Just normal enlistment. Sign up for the Navy. I'm going in under a BUDS contract or SEAL contract.
Okay.
At the time, they're giving $40,000 bonuses, I think, but on the completion of BUDS, so you didn't get that money until you made it through.
Good for them.
It's smart business.
That's right.
The government normally sucks at business, but they were smart on that.
They had that contract right.
That's right. So, long story short, you sign up, you go into the Navy, go through regular Navy boot camp. You have some extracurricular activities at the time. They've changed the pipeline a little bit now, but then you go into what's called like a holding pattern. We called it Scruff Duty at the time, would be kind of the slang term for it, but kind of pre-BUDS.
Okay.
In Great Lakes, Illinois, right? It sits up in Chicago where the Navy boot camp is. And you're held there, and they just kind of get you ready for BUDS. You're out in the snow, getting sprayed with a water hose, all that stuff. So you lose a lot of guys there. So when I go from 7 contracted in Alabama to actually getting to that Scruff Duty portion, there were a handful of guys left, but you just have a few guys contracted. But of that, you've got there were about 500 guys when I was there in that Scruff.
Oh, wow.
In that pre-BUDS. So now these are guys from all over the nation.
These are qualified. These guys have made it. They've screened it, everything.
That's exactly right.
They funneled down, and these are the dudes.
So from all over the nation. So now you got about 500 there, maybe not quite 500, but pretty close to it. And of those, they'll take the top 10% for the next BUDS class.
50.
So 50-ish of the 5. And when you go in, you have a screener standard, but you've got to be competitive in that screener standard. Like they'll say, hey, you got to do a minimum of 6 pull-ups or something like that. You better be doing 20 pull-ups if you want to be in that top end. So I was selected in that first group of 50-ish. I want to say it was probably 30-something guys that were taken to that first.
So they got down to 50, and then they even got down to, let's just say 35 or whatever the number.
Well, no, when I say they got down to 50, just 10% is the average. I think with my group, it wound up being about 35.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then from there, you go out to San Diego when you class
Coronado?
Up. Coronado, where BUDS training takes place. You class up. So I classed up in that first run. So finished Navy boot camp, come home for Christmas for 4 days because it finished right before Christmas. I got 4 or 5 days home for Christmas, go back to Scruff Duty. And for 1 month, we're just there getting beat, waiting to class up. And they're doing all those selections and screeners. You're doing all your stuff. And so I classed up with that first class, and January, like the 20th, maybe. Yeah. I went to Coronado to class up for BUDS.
So even getting into going to BUDS is it's pretty selective group.
It's extremely selective. So when you get to BUDS, you then show up and there's another block of guys of 300 to 500 dudes, all in this pre-BUDS arena.
Wow.
Indoctrination is what they called it when I was in. Again, the pipeline's changed a little bit.
Sure.
I'm not sure how impacted it gets, but it's kind of impacted, and then they're only taking so many dudes to class up with that next class. So there's about 500 dudes there. Now, these are guys who maybe have been there for 2 months. They're waiting to class up. They're going through medical. They're still going out getting beat. Instructor's still beating them. So the class I classed up with was class 264. I actually graduated with class 267, but class 264, we class up, And a guy that y'all can look up, Jared Ogden, he did some stuff on the Alaska, like some kind of Alaska survival thing, and good friend of mine still. And he was his company is what is the dang name of his company? I'll look it up.
I've heard
Jared
that
Ogden.
name.
Yeah, look it up. It's he's got a couple different things he does, but he does like target systems and has a really cool app that he runs for shooting.
Triumph
Anyway.
Systems?
Yeah, Triumph. That's it. Triumph Systems.
Yeah.
He was our OIC of our class. So he was a Naval Academy officer. He had to go to the regular Navy, but he was the OIC of our class. So we classed up under Ogden as the OIC. That's the officer in charge. And then you start what's called NDOC. So of those 500 guys, they actually classed up. Our class started with 364, if I remember right. So Jared, if you listen to this, you can send him a message if I'm wrong on that. I think Jared would probably remember. It might have been 366. Either way, we class up with that many out of about 500-ish dudes there. Then
it's just a constant funnel.
That's all it is a funnel. And that's Bud's NDOC. Now, of Bud's indoctrination, so that's where we started. Now we're in NDOC, and you still have to screen and perform. They're going to take, I think they took 220-something out of Bud's NDOC. So 220 start first phase, and that's where you see the videos like the Bud's 234 videos and all that stuff. That's where you see them start, kind of in first phase. That is really where everybody knows that's where the hard stuff really starts. Everything else is hard, but that's where it really gets hard. So it was an eye-opening experience for me as a 19-year-old thinking, God, how's it going to get harder than this? Yeah, how's it going to get harder than this? And so we go to first phase, and then at the end of Hell Week, I want to say we had 70 out of those 220, because Hell Week's within the first 3 weeks. Everything's Hell Week's it, and that's, it's easy after that. No, Hell Week is in the first 3 weeks of Bud's, and you've got a 6-month program left.
I was going to say, how long is Bud's? 6 months?
Bud's is 6 months. I got rolled, so it took me 8 months, but Bud's is 6 months. You've got a SQT, which is another 5-ish or 6 months, depending on the cycle. So you got a year worth of training before you even get to a SEAL team, and it's constantly being funneled. So Hell Week is the big marker, though, where you lose guys. I think we had 70-something, maybe 80-something after Hell Week out of those 220. Bud's NDOC, 366 started. Bud's first phase, 220-something started. 3 weeks into first phase, I don't remember how many we went into Hell Week.
70.
But after Hell Week, we're down to about 70. And these are all, you'll hear guys say, oh, I got injured. And that does happen. You have injuries, you have performance fails, but that's a very rare thing to have. That is a percentage of it. Most of it just, they quit, guys who quit.
So you said you got rolled. What does that mean?
So I had what was called a brachial plexopathy right after Hell Week. So I had nerve damage. I couldn't lift my left arm, and then I also tore my calf muscle and had blood clots in my leg during Hell Week. On Wednesday of Hell Week, I tore it. I finished Hell Week, and then they rushed me to the ER and put me in this pump thing to pump those blood clots out.
And then they let you finish?
And then, well, after Hell Week, I did a little bit of like the post-Hell Week kind of recovery stuff, which is still, they're beating you down and all that. It's just not as bad. And then I got rolled medically then. And then I waited 2 classes to class up.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So here's the question. Is being a Navy SEAL as hard as the movies portray it?
I mean, yes. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a constant, depending on where you're at, it's a constant requirement to perform. You can't ever just sit on your haunches and say, hey, I've made it. It's a constant chance to perform, or a constant requirement to perform. And then especially in combat, like,
I bet.
I had a hypothermia multiple times. My girls make fun of one of my toes here because that toenail goes black a lot because I had, it's like a Mr. Deeds foot. I had frostbite on that toe.
Mr. Deeds.
So you're constantly having to perform even under massive, duress. And then, hey, you take it a step further and you get the guys that go to Green Team and go over to Development Group, over to SEAL Team 6. That's an even another larger requirement.
So that's more of a funnel. So you got those Navy SEALs. So you say SEAL. I don't even know what is SEAL. I've heard that term.
So a lot of times they'll say SEAL Team 6 because there's no such thing as a SEAL Team 6. A lot of times they'll say SEAL Team 6 just to kind of a general blanket for any SEAL team. But generally speaking, when somebody refers to SEAL Team 6, they're referring to Development Group, okay?
Gotcha.
And that is, they test and evaluate a lot of gear. They're special mission unit. They're always on call. They're always Tier 1 on call, so a lot of high-level missions. So the 2 special mission units we have are SEALs at Development Group and CAG or Delta.
Okay.
And so those would be your 2 in that. And there's a lot of Tier 1 units, but those 2 are what's called special mission unit. Like they can get a call, hey, we got to respond.
And they got to go now.
when SEALs go through that pipeline, that training pipeline, and buddy of mine's an instructor over at Green Team now, or he might be at a squadron, back at a squadron. It's an even more strenuous training pipeline, and you get performance drops there. Nobody's going to quit, although everything is equally as hard. Guys are, you would normally have somebody would quit doing that.
But these guys have made it so far, they're not going to do it.
They're not going to quit. You're looking at strictly performance. So they're taking, I think he said the last one they had 60-ish% attrition rate, and that's among SEALs. The same thing with sniper school. So when I went to SEAL Team 3, when I checked in, I went straight to sniper school.
Okay.
I went overseas, checked in at the end of an Iraq deployment, went to Germany for a little while, and then I came back, and they said, hey, you're slated for sniper school. So I go to sniper school in January.
Okay, was that a question or was that an ask?
No, actually, they did ask me, say, hey,
Okay.
where do you want to go? And I said, hey, I'll go wherever the platoon. My chief asked me. I said, I'll go to wherever the platoon needs me to go. That's always everybody's standard answer.
Yeah, it's like Jesus in Sunday school.
Exactly, yeah. He said, so my chief, Benny, looked at me and he said, that's not what I asked you, son. I asked you, where do you want to go? And I said, well, if you're really asking me, I want to go to sniper school. And he said, you sound like you're going to be good at sniper school, because I had a country accent, And so he said, you sound like you'll be good at sniper school, and I definitely don't want to hear you talking on the radio. That's what he said. So he wound up sending two other of us new guys checking in to comm school and JTAC school, and sent me to sniper school. And that was his response to me. And man, sniper school was really flipping
Was it
hard.
awesome?
Oh, dude, it was awesome. It was probably my favorite training block in all of the training I've done. But it was really flipping hard. And it's a 60%. I think our class, we lost 65% of the guys, and these are SEALs. It's only SEAls.
But is it a physicality hard, or is it?
No, I mean, it is physically hard.
Yeah.
So, but like, for instance, if you miss on your cold bore shot, let's say at 500 yards, and they say, hey, you got to hit, here. Every inch I was off of my cold bore, you had to run a mile that morning before you went to the range and did your stuff, and you had to complete your mile. So you have some guys that they might be 8 inches off. Their
8 miles.
might be, so they got to run 8 miles. These dudes are, just smoke showing up to the range. So, I mean, it was physically hard because of stuff like that, but nobody's going to quit. It was strictly an attrition rate.
It's a performance.
It's a performance-based thing.
Yeah.
You're moving targets that are 11-inch wide at 800 meters. I mean, so you've got a lot of stuff going on. So it's the same thing with Green Team. Like CQB is their big thing. Also jumping, which we're all Halo and Hey-Ho qualified, but it's even more advanced.
Yeah.
It's even more advanced CQB. So it's strictly a performance-based.
taking the top of the rung on all this stuff.
That's what they're doing and that's for most schools in the teams.
Okay, so you're 39. Could you still be doing all the Navy SEAL stuff today?
No, so I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 10 years ago, and they tracked it to the anthrax vaccine. I'd actually screened positive for Green Team, so I was going to go through that selection process.
Give me the what is Green Team?
The selection process for SEAL Team
6. Okay, yeah, okay, I got you.
And my chief at the time, he had come from Red Squadron back over the West Coast, and so he had set up a screener for us. He had his guys come in, and he had picked a couple of us, and we went and did it. 2 of the guys that I screened with are there. They're still there now. And so we did that, and then going through a medical process, because I was also looking at getting out. I was like, I want to go back to Alabama. I was kind
of...
I mean,
and how old were you at the time?
29.
Okay, 10 years.
Yeah, I said, well, 28. I turned 29 that fall in January. So as I'm looking at this, I'm like, what do I want to do? Talk to my wife about it. We want to come back to Alabama, but long story short, went through a medical process. They found I had type 1 diabetes, and I had to go through the process then I could have been in the regular Navy with being a diabetic, but I cannot be a SOCOM or JSOC operator and be insulin dependent. So they added everything up. I broke my back a few times, broke my neck once, had a couple knee surgeries.
Standard stuff.
TBI.
I got you.
It's actually standard in the SEAL team.
Yeah, sounds like it, yeah.
And what they were able to do is add all of that up with the type 1 diabetes to give me a kind of a pseudo-medical retirement.
Sure.
I was able to be, honorably discharged from the Navy, all of that stuff, so it didn't impact work later, but, also was able to take care of my families, get retirement ID. So it was it worked out well, and I can't complain. As SOCOM Care Coalition, which is an actual part of SOCOM that helped take care of me.
That's great.
Paid an attorney to deal with the stuff between the the Navy and the VA and all that process. And so when I went through that and I got out, that was, I couldn't do, can I still shoot, move, and communicate? Can I still do CQB and do a lot of the stuff? Yeah, I can still do a lot of that, but physically I do see and understand why you can't be insulin dependent.
When they tested you for that and you had it, were you like, what? Did you ever have any like?
So the original test that they did, the Group 1 doc said there's no way you have type 1 diabetes. I was about 200 pounds, maybe 195, 200 pounds, 4% body fat, so super lean. I was a real good performer, top physical performer, and he said there's no way you have diabetes. And I remember when he said that, I was like, what? He said, hey, do me a favor, go home for the weekend, just don't hammer a bunch of carbs, don't eat don't go to the Mexican restaurant and eat 3 baskets of chips, because I would do that at that time. And he said, then come back. So I just went home and I said, and I remember my wife and some friends we were all joking about it, because it just didn't make sense.
Didn't fit.
So I go back and blood sugars were good, and I got out somehow, and I got through that medical process. And then like 2 months later, it kicked off hard. I got back from a job working anti-piracy off the coast of Africa, and I lost 26 pounds in a week. I was passing out all the time. I was pissing all the time. I mean, it was rough. And that's where they found out I had type 1.
What was the change, though?
I don't know. It just is. So that's the way it works. Like it's
26 pounds from 4% body fat. That's
oh,
like,
yeah, dude. I lost. Like, my wife found a picture the other day. I went from 195 to 170 in like a little over a week. And she's like, something is really wrong. We thought maybe I had a parasite or something overseas, but went to the doc, checked my blood sugar, and even my buddy of mine's a paramedic. He said, bro, it sounds like you have diabetes, but that doesn't seem right. Are you dipping enough, man? There's always something stupid.
So, yeah.
And, but yeah, that's how
wow.
That was 2014, I think, 2013, 2014.
So 10 years.
Yeah.
So last Navy SEAL question, or military question, if this is even the right word, and if this is not the right word, I'll re-ask it. What's the scariest you've ever been on a mission?
Hey, man, I don't think I was...
Is scared the right word?
Nah, yeah, I can't think of an op I ever went on where I was really scared. I would say now that I have kids, I get more.
Oh,
I get more scared with them. But if I'm really thinking, I don't know, man. I tell you what, this is not necessarily an op, but this is training. Bud's third phase. We swim, do a night swim out on San Clemente Island. That's the Great White Breeding Grounds, and we're doing a night swim, and we swim 1,000. We're out in this cove, and so we're 1,000 meters offshore, and you have to swim 1,000 meter leg to a buoy and then 1,000 back in, right? So it's a 2,000 meter swim, so not super far really, but the way this cove works, we go to that buoy and come straight into the beach. So you're out here in the deep waters, and then you're swimming back into the beach. So we enter the water, we start swimming. It's kelp and everything everywhere, and then we get out of the kelp.
And people don't know this. People think that if you've never been to California, people think that California is sunshine and rainbows all the time, and the temperature in the air is wonderful, but the water.
Oh, it's cold. Yeah,
it's cold.
It's cold. Water was probably, it wasn't bad at that time. It's probably in the 60s.
But that's, for the most part, that's
so
chilly.
We swim out, and then, of course, the instructors are all playing shark attack videos and Jaws videos before you do your night swim, And so I would say, your butt holds puckered a little bit as you swim out. But this little, we see this seal. We'd see seals swimming all the time, not Navy SEAls, but the animals.
Yeah,
the animals bouncing in the.
Not my buddy.
Water, yeah.
Yeah.
And probably from me to maybe that camera over there away, maybe a little bit further than that, and just swimming around, and we kind of slow down swimming. Then all of a sudden we just hear. Ooh. I mean, that's the only noise I can. That's what it sounded like, in a big splash and a rush of water. No more swimming. This instructor, who was in a boat where it's probably from us to that glass over there, right? So what is that? Maybe 20 feet?
20 feet.
He is 20 feet away from us in the boat. He blows his whistle. It's shark in the water, shark in the water.
And you think he's playing?
No, we don't think he's playing. We just saw him.
We just saw Jaws.
That must be the shark that was for me,
wow.
15 feet away. And he cranks up his little.
And this is at night.
It's at night, yeah. So the moon was out. I remember, and so he goes, man, hey, let's get in the boat. He goes, no, every man for himself. He rides that boat into the beach, and so that's the fastest ever swam. So I would say that's butthole.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's but operations and stuff, I don't think that things are happening too fast to really think about it. There've been some gunfights where it's like, it's just really flipping close,
Yeah.
But you can't.
It's like playing football. I mean, I say that I'm not
the first flick of the game.
I'm not comparing the military and people shooting at you to football, but after the initial you're in it,
Yeah.
it's all a blur, and you're just there doing your job.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You're just doing your job. I mean, we had been in helos. First time I broke my back, got flung out of a helo that got shot, and so stuff like that.
Right.
But you don't have time to, if you were going to be afraid, which I'm not sure whether you don't necessarily have time to be afraid when those things happen.
Yeah.
And being afraid doesn't help the problem.
It don't help anything. Yeah. So when you get out of the military, what did you decide to go do?
So I get out of the military. It was kind of a weird out process. I always explained why. And come back, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. Tried some contracting, some anti-piracy stuff. And so, long story short, I couldn't go overseas. Wanted to do the federal agent thing with the U.S. Marshal Service, but at the time they didn't allow type 1 diabetics to be, a federal agent.
Wow.
I think that's changed now at this time. But so I didn't get picked up there. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to finish my degree. And I called John Samniego. He's the sheriff of Shelby County.
Okay.
I'd met him through a buddy out in San Diego or something. He'd given me a card. I found his card in a cruise box. I called him, went through the hiring process with Shelby County Sheriff's Office, and got hired there and went through the academy with Shelby County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
So, Lord opened the doors. Did that full time for a year, and it was actually a really good job. But all that being said, I had an opportunity with my MBA and with my business to go look at some other things. And then with that med retirement stuff coming in, I didn't have to have something to rely on. So I was able to kind of swing a little bit harder and go try business, go start my business.
So you're into that. You're out of the military. And is that when you started Covenant Rescue?
Mm-mm. So I started a business called the Shooting Institute. So we did tactical, military, law enforcement training and all that. And I still run the company now, still train for the SEAL teams.
You do? You still run that too?
Yeah.
What's it called?
The Shooting Institute, TSI.
Oh my God.
We run tactical and military training, or we run tactical and firearms training for military and law enforcement. I still teach for the SEAL team. I actually got one coming up in 2 weeks for Team 10, I think. And so we do all branches of the military. Law enforcement, run SWAT schools here in the state. So we do a lot of that sort of training. And out of that, the Lord really opened the doors and blessed. I did really well in that. I got kind of sucked into the human trafficking world. And when I got sucked in that world with Tim Ballard over OUR, the Operation Underground Railroad, and the, what's it called? That movie, Sound of Freedom. People be familiar with that.
Yeah.
Started doing some work with him through another buddy in the SEAL teams, and just felt the Lord calling me and my wife, because we had people giving us money like this, just write checks.
For what?
Because they said, "Hey, you're doing great work."
What were you doing? Just
volunteering to go work in human trafficking.
in the human trafficking.
Yeah, so I got sucked into that. Still running my business, and then I'd still go.
So you've got the Shooting Institute. So is the Shooting Institute, even currently, is the Shooting Institute your quote unquote income? Is this how you feed your family? Is this a portion of it? Anyway?
Yeah, so at least a portion of it. At the time, that was it.
So who hires you to do that besides the government? Who would hire the Shooting Institute?
I mean, any individual that wants something, they can, but generally speaking, the government, because they're the ones that write the paychecks. Most people don't want to pay $400 an hour for pistol instruction. They'd rather go pay $150 to a cop who's going to teach them on the weekend. And I understand that. But
totally understand.
There's a lot of doctors in this area that do it, a lot of attorneys, and they kind of want that personalized experience. And so we do that for them, but pretty much just government.
Do you work with kids on that? Like if you had,
We have now, but only if their parents, are their uncle or whatever. Yeah, but yeah, we absolutely have.
Wow. Okay, so after that, so you're doing the Shooting Institute. You're volunteering for any kind of human trafficking.
Human trafficking stuff, getting involved in it, and an organization that's no longer around started paying me a monthly stipend to work on a program for them, and I can't remember. It's called Orphan Secure.
Okay.
They're no longer around. The guy was former FBI that started it, and not a bad organization. Just a lot of stuff in the human trafficking world. As I got involved in it, I noticed was symbolism without substance.
Say that. Okay, explain that.
They say, "Hey, we're doing all this," and they might be doing something good, but
we're doing this, but they're really doing this.
There you go.
Okay.
And so one of the things I saw is they're like, "Hey, yeah, we helped arrest all these guys in this child porn ring." One, it wasn't a child porn ring. Two, the FBI had been looking at it for like 2 years. And three, they bought 3 computers and gave them to an agency, and the agency happened to use those computers to send some emails or look at that web. So that's a lot of what you see in the human trafficking world. not to disparage those organizations.
No, I
but
don't.
that wasn't me. And I was kind of like, as we see this, I'm like, hey, how can we do this operationally? And it was very difficult to figure out a way to do it operationally. The Lord has just opened the doors. And so for us, we're an operational organization in how we go about it. Then you have the other side of it on the child exploitation. A lot of these guys, like the Chris Hansen thing, they'll chat some guy up. They'll be like, show up to Walmart, they'll beat him up. I watched them make a guy drink his own piss or whatever.
Yeah.
The dude was autistic. The dude had autism. That's not the same criminal act.
You're not targeting that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not the same criminal act. Now, does it need to be dealt with? Yes.
No question. Yes.
But is it dealt with in a criminal way? No, it can't be, because this guy doesn't know what he's doing. So we see a lot of that. There's a state official in our state who reached out to us and said, in the state of Alabama, said, hey, I've got a daughter who, I think their daughter had Down syndrome is what she said. But whatever it was, whatever disability was, I'm just trying to remember. She said, hey, can y'all look into this guy who's been targeting her out of Florida? We said, yeah, we will. So we dig into the guy, do a little bit of investigation, and we say, hey, look, this guy is, and this girl's of age. This girl that she has
special needs.
The special needs girl is of age, in her late 20s, I believe, but she lives at home with her parents.
Yeah.
Take care of her. So long story short, this guy, he was probably 19 or 20, but he was definitely autistic, if not something else. He was also special needs, is the point. And you couldn't see it physically on him, but as you dig into him and as we started researching, this guy was special needs. So we call her back and say, hey, look, he's also special needs. There's no reason to spin up law enforcement. And so that is the other problem with a lot of this is there's a lot of things out there that are not a criminal act. I'm also going to go ahead and say the 19-year-old guy who's showing up for, you've been chatting as a 15 or 16-year-old girl, does that meet the state law as being illegal? Yes, but that is a whole lot different than the 40 or 50-year-old dude who's actively targeting 13, 14, 15.
No doubt.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
So there's a little bit of grace and mercy that has to be given there. Doesn't mean it doesn't need to be dealt with.
The 19-year-old doesn't need to be talking to the 15-year-old. But what if the 15, and I go back to this, and I'm not rationalizing anything, but what if the 15-year-old says I'm 17?
Well, you've got that, and that happens a lot.
Yeah. Those are the things I think of.
But when you have these guys chatting these individuals in, I mean, heck, I'm 39, my wife is 35, will be 36 soon. So, I mean, so when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's like there is something different there. It does not mean it doesn't need to be dealt with.
Correct.
But it doesn't need to be dealt with in a criminal fashion, right? Slap this guy's wrist, let him know what he's doing wrong, go through the process. But these people with these vigilante groups, they don't do that. It's just whoever shows up, and most of the time they're entrapping these individuals. That's the other thing.
So the company you have is called Covenant Rescue Group. What specifically do you do with Covenant Rescue Group?
No, that's a great question. So the Shooting Institute is a company that I own. I solely own the Shooting Institute and the founder of it. I founded Covenant Rescue Group. However, the way nonprofits work, I do not own Covenant Rescue Group.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Members own it, but I am the CEO.
CEO and the founder. I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to say it. Yeah, you're right.
I've chosen not to be on the board for specific reasons, so they could let me go at any time, right? And say one thing, upset them. It's just the way it is. It's owned by our board members. We have a 9-person board, but primarily what we do is we go in and we work with local law enforcement agencies, local and state, but primarily local. Your sheriff's office, your municipalities. We like working with the sheriff's office more than a municipality because it's, generally speaking, one single court system in that.
County.
Yeah, one county.
Yep.
And it's an elected official, the highest elected official in that county, or the chief law enforcement officer of that county, and the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
Right? So we go in and we work with those individuals, and all we do is we train law enforcement agencies on how to effectively do these operations. They actually have the ability to do this, but most of them don't know how to. And they'll tell you
they're not coached up.
They're not. They'll tell you that they do, but one thing that we've seen across the board is law enforcement's really good at targeting drugs, and they'll use prostitution to target drugs. Everything their mind is wrapped around when it comes to sex trafficking and quotation mark is based on prostitution, which is a misdemeanor probable cause charge to hopefully get a certain person forbidden, a felon with a gun, drugs, whatever it is. We don't do that, right? You now have a misdemeanor case that's not going to be prosecuted because of prostitution to hopefully get a larger felony case. We build a felony case on the front end, and it only takes 30 minutes to a couple hours to do it. We build a solid felony case on the front end where they're going to be hit with 2 to, let's say in this state of Alabama, 2 to 5 charges, depending on what they do.
Right.
Just for this felony case. If they do show up with drugs, if they have a warrant, if they're a certain person, okay, great, that's a cherry on top. But we build a solid felony case on the front end so that when they show up to buy a child, when we get them to meet us to buy a child, it's done. And it's a bang-up case for any prosecutor. Has to prosecute it. It's an easy case for a grand jury. You know, I've been subpoenaed to a grand jury a few times, and they wind up true billing everything. I mean, we never have any hung person because they see, holy cow, these guys didn't entrap this guy. This is strictly by the book. This guy was caught doing something he would do. And the statistics that we always used to use with the FBI was 25. That's 25 victims for every person arrested that's showing up to buy or sell a kid. It's actually changed now, and I learned this through actually my church, Gardner First Baptist. They're putting out something. They're saying, hey, this is something we need to look at, you know, within the ministry, you know, especially, you know, men and women who might target kids. Every individual who shows up to buy or would mess with little girls, we'll say the little girls first, 52 victims is what they have before they're successfully prosecuted. So for every dude showing up for a dude, for a little boy, 150 victims before they're prosecuted. So we target both of those. We use boys and girls.
I know it does yours, but it makes my stomach turn when you used the term "buy a child."
Yeah, so I mean they're buying. So that, I mean they're literally buying a child for sex. Where the child's selling themselves, where we act as a parent selling the child or whatever it is. They're showing up to buy a child for sex. Once we infiltrate that, once we find the consumer, we then can find the supplier. Most of that comes from ripping data off their phone. Sometimes they're willing to talk, but we get a warrant. Rip the data off their phone because we're going to be able to get it because we have a successful felony arrest.
Correct.
Rip the data off their phone and we'll find, you know, child pornography, production, distribution. The worst that we've seen, feds got a hold of this, and that's one thing the feds do great. You know, Homeland Security and FBI do this very well.
Okay, that's awesome.
FBI really does the child pornography stuff very well. HSI really does the child exploitation stuff very well, right? So
when you say child exploitation, what do you mean?
So child exploitation would be like, it could be forced labor, it could be, but primarily sex.
Yeah,
right? It's primarily you know, buying or selling kids for sex. You know, so your pedophilia based stuff, right?
Correct.
But so the worst we've seen, we arrested a guy who's showing up for a 14-year-old girl, if I remember right. This is a couple years ago. I believe it was in Mississippi. We arrested a guy showing up for a 14-year-old girl, and easy op, good. We arrested him. He gets state charges, whatever they were, state felony charges, and they rip his phone, and he was actually producing child porn with his own 18-month-old daughter. So he's having sex with his own 18-month-old daughter, performing sex acts on her. He's producing that and selling it. So then they were able to get a hold of it. So he got charged federally with that as well, and sentenced to whatever it was, 40-something years, I think, total. Dude was in his late 30s, you know, probably our age, maybe, you know, give or take, late 30s, early 40s. So with that being said, that is who we're going after.
Yeah.
These dudes, these chicks are showing up for kids, and they have victims, right? We're not looking for...
You very rarely do you get the guy that's a first-timer.
I can think of one out of... Okay, so in the last year, the last 18 months, what was our number? What did he say? 147, maybe 147 felony arrests. We've had one that was a first-timer. The Marshal Service, and that kid was 21 years old, showing up for a boy. That being said, the Marshal Service is like partnering with us because it also gives them the ability to find guys who have already been charged with this. They go through, they're released, so they're like sex offenders. So the Marshal Service can then see if they violated or see if they're doing these things and they violate their parole. Yeah.
How can you be more effective with Covenant Rescue Group?
So the example I use, there's 3,100 sheriff's offices in the nation, plus or minus at any given time, plus or minus 10%. Our goal is to go to every law enforcement agency and provide this training. However, we're booked out through 2025. August 2025.
Okay, so booked out through 2025, meaning
we can perform this one time a month. And
is that a funding issue?
It's a funding issue because now we have the guys, but we need more money to be able to hire the guys, because if we could just cut that in half and do 2 of these a month, we could have 2 teams running 2 of these a month in multiple locations around the nation. We can be more effective with what we do. We can get this to more agencies quicker. And so a lot of times it's not just a single agency. So we just did one with Montgomery County. That's in the news. You can talk about that. But there were multiple agencies involved in that. You had Montgomery County, the sheriff down there, Sheriff Cunningham, met with him a year and a half ago. Great guy. chief deputy, great guy. They got a great team, but they also had the Marshal Service partnered with them. They had Aaliyah, Alabama law enforcement, so state troopers. Then there's a state trooper arrested on this, but Aaliyah was there. Montgomery PD was there. So it's a multi-agency thing.
So you told me this, and if you can't say, just say I can't say. You said you had a state trooper arrested in this. What was the state trooper like using his influence to?
No. It's, from my knowledge, no. He was showing up. So, and I didn't realize it was a state trooper until the public news release on Monday. They all kept that pretty tight. We knew he was a law enforcement officer, but we did not know he was a
trooper.
An Aaliyah guy. So, and I don't know the specifics of him, but you can look him up. I mean, there's all kinds of news releases on his name's Ryan Rhodes, I believe.
Wow.
But you can look that up, State Trooper Ryan Rhodes, arrest in Alabama, and see if it's. But there's a lot of public information. To be honest with you, that's my knowledge of that individual. We knew he was a cop.
You don't. Yeah, you got. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
You're not like super. Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
But it's no different than it. I mean, the point is this impacts every. We're sitting here. Can I say we're sitting?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got the Church of the Highlands right here.
Yeah.
How many people are on this campus right now?
On the campus right now, 700, probably 1,500 people here.
1,500 people here. 1,500 people. If we were to chat all these people, and it's going to blow your mind, but if we were to chat all these people, we could arrest between 10 and 15 here on this campus right now.
Wow.
Strictly a numbers game. Everywhere you go, doesn't matter if it's a church, doesn't matter if it's a mosque, doesn't matter if it's a
whatever.
If it's law enforcement, firefighter, everywhere you go, we could arrest 15 people out of 1,500. That's just the numbers that average. So when people say, "Hey, does this problem exist in our area?" It exists everywhere. The only reason you get more numbers or less numbers is because of the volume of people, the amount of people.
What is the number one commonality amongst all the people you've arrested?
I would say the biggest commonality would be, I might not call it the number one commonality, but it would be close to that, but would be that these individuals are not committing other crimes. Sometimes you will see them do that, but for the most part, they don't have a criminal history. They're untouched, they're unknown. The only way you get these individuals is through this. And most of them are afraid.
Most of them are what?
Most of them are afraid.
Yeah.
So that's I will say this, the thing that we've noticed when, especially working with law enforcement, they want to go, hey, we got this great motel. They're thinking prostitution. They're thinking the low level of society, the scum of society, prostitution, alcohol, drugs. I mean, they're thinking that, these roach motels and all. These dudes don't come to those. You've got to get a decent hotel. These individuals have to, because they're not that part of society.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, they are the scum of society, but they don't live in that squalor like what we're used to seeing in law enforcement, where all of that notorious activity is taking place. These are regular dudes. These dudes are cabinet makers and plumbers, finance advisors,
so
church ministers.
It's not
teachers.
It's not a socioeconomic thing.
Nope.
These guys, there's no like SWAT of that. It's this demographic.
This guy was showing up for a boy, and I won't go into the specifics of his case, but he was showing up for a boy, and he said, and this blew us away. He said, "My family and my church are going to be destroyed." That's what he said. He had 3 girls. If I remember right, he had 3 girls. His wife and her dad, if I remember right, showed up. The sheriff almost had a domestic there on site. The sheriff had to go out and deal with that, or some of the sheriff deputies had to go out and deal with that, because this individual was supposed to be at the gym, found this girl on this sex site, was cool with her age, shows up for a 14-year-old girl, gets caught. And those are the first words that he said. And all these guys, they know what they're doing is wrong. It's not so. And here's one of the issues, and there's probably defense attorneys that listen to this. If you're a defense attorney and you defend one of these individuals, in my opinion, you're the biggest piece of crap on the face of the earth. You're even more of a piece of crap than they are, because, and Scripture talks about it. It says that, they'll say what's righteous is wicked and what's wicked is righteous, right? It talks about that in Romans, and claiming they were wise, they became fools. We see all that happening in Romans. And that's what you see going on. They're saying that these individuals that were literally showing up to buy a kid and knew what they were doing and knew they were wrong, they have the ability to get a defense attorney to protect them. And you got defense attorneys that will do it.
That will take the money and do it.
Now, here's the thing. Our Constitution, praise God for it, our Constitution shows that these individuals are innocent until proven guilty. The benefit that I have on this side of it is I know we didn't entrap these guys.
Yeah.
And I know that they're guilty. They are so guilty that we don't even go after them. If the agency chooses to sign warrants on them, whatever, just from messages, that's enough to get somebody, right? We don't even like doing that. We want them to commit that overt act. This dude is showing up thinking he's purchasing a child for sex. That's what they think.
Yeah.
They 100% believe it. They show up with money in their pocket. They show up what they 100% believe it. To me, why do we not want to target that individual?
Right.
Because he has 50, the statistics show he has 52 other victims if it's female, 150 if it's male.
What can someone privately hire you, or do you specifically work with agencies?
No, we specifically work with law enforcement agencies. Now, we will help people with investigations, and then we'll turn it over to law enforcement. We're sworn as law enforcement. In different, yeah, we're all sworn as law enforcement. However, when we do these operations, I'm not working in my purview as a task force officer with Homeland Security, or our guys that work as TFOs with FBI, or in my position as an Alabama state, police officer or a deputy here in Alabama. We're not, or wherever our guys are sworn at, deputies in Tennessee, Indiana, wherever it is. We're not working in our purview as a law enforcement officer. We're conducting training on behalf of Covenant Rescue Group. Those credentials essentially give us that, we talked about it earlier, those credentials give us credibility.
Yes.
We're not coming in saying, hey, we're just this NGO, or we're a bunch of SEALs, or a bunch of, Delta guys, or a bunch of Rangers that are going to show you what to do. We're not saying that. We're showing, hey, we're law enforcement. We do this. We know how to do this. Let us help you so you can make these felony arrests in your community.
So you said you're booked out until September, which is, it's 12 months from now, 14 months from now. I know you said municipalities hire you. What does the process look like? X county in so-and-so Alabama wants to hire you.
Yeah.
What does that look like, and how does that process go?
So the first thing is, they don't necessarily hire us because we're a nonprofit. Everything doesn't cost the agency anything. They just have to supply people. We do this for free to the agency. That's why we do it through the nonprofit. It does not cost the agency anything, because if it did, they wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it.
They wouldn't do it. And it's not that agencies don't have money. I'm going to level an accusation against most law enforcement leadership. Most of these guys have been in the government their whole life. They've never run a business. They have the money. Not all of them. Not all of them. There's small agencies that don't have any money, but a lot of your larger agencies, they misallocate the valuable resources they have. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Kind of like the U.S. government. We see the same thing with federal agencies. Oh, we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources. If I ran my business like they run the government, we would have tanked up years ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but if they have to spend it, we all hear all the time, we don't have the resources. They have to spend it, they won't do it. So we offer it to them for free. It started out with us, having to call around and ask people. Now we get blown up. We have people constantly calling us or want to work with us, especially the smaller agencies.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, like, you're free. Like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that,
well, there's an ego aspect to it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
And I was the same guy that got me into law enforcement, John Samaniego, told me on the phone recently. I said, hey, we want to come over and do some work. I said, no, we got it figured out. We know what we're doing here. He said, I won't speak for the smaller agencies, but we're good to go. Well, I know they're not good to go. I know that they don't know how to do this because nobody knows how to do it.
What is this?
The program that we have set up. We teach them how to effectively set up a child exploitation program, because 100% of the time when you're dealing with children, it is human trafficking.
How did you learn that?
I actually learned it from a guy that I'm really upset with. His agency was doing it. Chris Swanson out of Genesee County, Michigan.
Okay.
He just came out and supported Kamala Harris. If we talk political, I'm very much against her for sure.
Yeah.
And he's a Democrat, and so he's kind of bought hook, line, and sinker in the Democrat Party, but good sheriff nonetheless, from what I could tell. And he started a program similar to this in his county. We've taken what he's done, we've honed it, we've actually made it a lot better. And made it to where it's a one-size-fits-all. So that's one of the biggest issues that they have, is what they did worked for their area.
Yeah.
But each county, each municipality, everywhere you go, it's almost like it's a different country, right?
Sure.
Because, and the example I'll use Demopolis, Alabama, and Mountain Brook, Alabama, because this is the example that so we did an op in Demopolis. The prosecutor's office came in and they said, hey, we know we're going to have a jury pool. Our jury pool was going to be predominantly older black females. That's what they said. They said, so when we run this operation, you can't chat as a 15-year-old girl, 16-year-old girl, whatever it was. you have to chat as a 13 or 14-year-old girl, or we have to make them think they're showing up for a 13 or 14-year-old girl, because this older black demographic of female, even though they might vote Democrat, they are super conservative. Most of them were married at a very young age. And they will not ever say, oh yeah, he was showing up for a child when they hear 15. They just don't do that. Even though it meets state law, it supersedes state law by a couple years.
That's wisdom, bro.
So it's not just the law, it's what's my jury pool? What's the prosecutor need or want, right? The law enforcement agent is the physical aspect. Hey, we're going to hook them on the ground and we're going to build a case. But if the prosecutor can't prosecute that case, and if it gets thrown out because you have a hung jury or whatever, when it goes to jury trial, or a judge says, hey, I'm not doing that because of X, Y, and Z. So they look at their demographic. Who's my jury pool? Now, that is Demopolis, Alabama. They also said, hey, bro, we'll be honest with you. If you have the homosexual profile, right, you have a profile for, male showing up for male or whatever, that guy could probably be in his 20s and they're going to be like, throw that dude under the jail. Why? Because it's a more conservative, an older black female demographic was more conservative in how and they base this on their cases. This is why you can't do this at a state level. You can't do it at a federal level. The closest form of government to the people, John Locke and Thomas Paine, the closest form of the government to the people is the most effective.
Right.
Why? Because they understand and they know the people. The prosecutor tells us this is how this case has to be built. It has to be built this way. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to prosecute it. Now, we see that going on because of, and that's just what he said. Now, do I know if it's true or not? No, but I trust them because they're the subject matter experts for their area down there in that Demopolis area. Older black female demographic was going to be the primary jury pool. Go to Mountain Brook or go to Homewood. It's going to be a 40s to 50s white female demographic.
Mm-hmm.
You chat a homosexual profile, even at 14 or 15, they are going to be more apt to not want to hammer that guy because it's more of a liberal demographic. You chat as a 19 or 20, 21-year-old girl, this guy showing up by sex, boy, you better hammer them because every female's a victim in their minds, again, because of a liberal mindset. So we have to go about that differently. So it
makes total sense, though.
And that's everywhere in the nation. So we got 67 counties in Alabama. Of 67 counties, I think we got 43 prosecutorial jurisdictions where we sit right now in Alabama. So you'll hear the district attorney say, "Oh, I'm actually the chief law enforcement officer of the county." No, you're not, because some district attorneys have to cover multiple counties. The sheriff is the chief law enforcement agent of the county. That's why we have 67 sheriffs.
Right.
The prosecutor is an elected official, and it's vitally important, but they work on behalf of the state. Now, the state attorney general, Steve Marshall, is the chief law enforcement agent of the state as the attorney general. Whether we agree or disagree with how that works doesn't matter. And so those DAs might have to deal with multiple counties. So you might have one county sheriff that builds great cases and can bring them over to the prosecutor's office and they have no problem with it. And then you might have another county sheriff, they don't have the ability to build these good cases.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so,
totally.
I believe, since we're in Shelby County, or we're on the edge of Jefferson, so Jefferson County has two prosecutors. Jefferson County is so big, you have the cutoff, right? Yeah. Lanice Washington, and then you have Danny Carr. Work with both of them, and they're Democrats, but they're good. And then you have sheriff over the county, Mark Petway, the guy that I ran against. Yeah. I've talked with Mark even after I ran.
Sure.
We want to, and so working in this county, the sheriff has jurisdiction across the county, but depending on where they're at, you might have to make a case for Lanice Washington versus a case for Danny Carr. John Samaniego over here in Shelby County and Matt Casey would be the prosecutor over here. I think that they're just, John is obviously in this county. I think Matt just covers this county.
Gotcha.
Greg Griggers down in the Demopolis, I think it's Marion County, Greene County, and Hale County, maybe some down there in that area.
Yeah.
It's 17th Judicial Task Force. He covers 3 counties. So he might have a Greene County Sheriff's Office making a case, or he might have a Demopolis PD, or so depending on where you're at in the state, and that's all over. That's the way it is. You got 43 prosecutorial jurisdictions. It might be 41. You might want to look that up to fact check me on that. But there's 67 counties. So that's the way it is across the nation. And each one of those counties is different, and each one of those prosecutorial jurisdictions is different. So you have to make sure that we get on the same page: arrest, prosecution, and sentencing. And that prosecutor is what's going to help you out with understanding, hey, this is my jury, and this is what the judge is going to say on sentencing. We can go for these charges, we can't go for this, or we're going to need this if we go for these charges. So it's a full package thing that we try to bring in.
This is where you're talking about. You learned this from the guy in Michigan, but then you've adapted it because they did it specifically for their area.
Yes.
But you've adapted it to Mountain Brook to Demopolis. What you're saying.
That's exactly.
So here's the hard question. So what is the worst area in Alabama for sexual predators?
Man, I don't know if there is a worst area. Obviously, your Huntsvilles, your Birminghams, your Montgomerys, your Mobiles, your areas where you have a larger group of people.
Numbers game.
It's just a numbers game, right? It's just like with your people here do with finance or whatever. You want to be in the stock market, it's a numbers game. If I have more money to invest, I'm going to make more money because it's based simply on percentages. We kind of see the same thing with this.
Makes total sense.
It's everywhere. The smaller the demographic of people, the harder it is to tap into that because they are...
Everybody knows everybody.
Everybody knows everybody, right? The larger the demographic of people, the easier it is to tap into because not everybody knows.
And people can hide.
People can hide. And so a lot of times what you see is you see people driving from, let's say we did an op maybe 2 months ago in Lee County with the sheriff's office there. They did a great job. Man, the prosecutor's office, that group, the sheriff's office.
Lee County, that's down in Auburn.
Yeah. Man, they did phenomenal. Montgomery County recently, they did phenomenal. We did one with them last year, and we came back and to kind of audit what they did. They had this thing set up like this is what we want. They did it.
Oh,
man, they had it knocked out. Like,
so they learned from you the first time. That's great. That's awesome. Isn't that awesome?
And we came back, and they did a phenomenal job. The investigators. I mean, they hone it for them. That's the thing. They take the template we give them, and then they hone it for them. So using these two places, I believe, if I remember right, somebody from Montgomery or that Montgomery area drove over to Lee County. So, because it's pretty close. It's only about an hour and a half-ish drive, give or take, right, to where they went to, from where they came from, where they went to. So that's also what you'll see. They'll leave their major area, and they'll target somebody there. So we'll get people from Birmingham coming to Coleman. We'll get people from Mountain Brook going out to, Blount County, or you'll get people from Blount County going to Mountain Brook.
Wow. Covenant Rescue Group's nonprofit. How do you fund the operations?
Yeah, so we actually received our first grant from the government this year, which I'll talk about that in just a second, how that works. Anything with the government's a hassle, right?
Sure.
But besides that, it's been private donors, some foundations, private foundations that have supported us, but it's just been private donors donating. Church of the Highlands has actually supported some of our rescue operations. My church, Gardendale First Baptist, has supported some of our rescue operations. Other ministries, far-reaching ministries, has supported some of our overseas stuff. So all of that being said, ministries and people.
Yeah.
The government actually, and they come out and they do this big thing. Oh, we allotted $200,000 grant to Covenant Rescue Group because they're doing great. And Kay Ivey signed off, and we're very appreciative of that. And it's great to see the state of Alabama at the highest level say what these guys are doing is the real deal. This is good work. However, in order to receive that, it's not like we just received $200,000, get
a check.
It's not that. You have to, you basically submit a reimbursement request. So we have to have the money to do the operation. We submit a reimbursement request, and within, a month or two, we get reimbursed up to 75% of the cost, I believe. And so what we can pull from is the $200,000.
Correct.
So once we use all that up, and it's got certain little line items and stuff.
You can use it for this, use it that.
Yeah, you got this much for mileage and this much for outside contractors. And then if we want to change up, say, hey, we need to do this with it, we have to go in, do a process, change it up. So it's, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because they're trying to be effective with their money, but it's also not what it's presented as either. It's been a great grant, and we hope we continue to get it because it is absolutely helping us here in the state of Alabama. Impact.
Oh, Alabama. It's got to be Alabama specific.
That's a DECA. And they're doing a great job at impacting battered and abused women and just all of the issues that revolve around this.
Yeah.
They're helping us train law enforcement how to effectively deal with it.
Someone's out there and they want to give. Where do they go?
CovenantRescue.org.
CovenantRescue.org. There's a place to give there. That's great. In your years of doing this, what have you seen? What is the number one demographic being targeted today by sexual predators?
I would say females. Females, obviously, easily.
What age?
Well, I mean, you can still have of-age females that are being targeted, but definitely younger females. Anybody who could be victimized, easily victimized. So, example I give: we arrested a guy maybe a year and a half ago now, not far from here in the Birmingham area. He was showing up for a 14-year-old girl, and he got arrested. The whole press release went out, or whatever that the agency does. They do a press release, say we arrested these individuals, are innocent until proven guilty, but this is what we did. And I think all of them have met their, whatever it was, they've been sentenced and everything. all been convicted of whatever it was. A lady called after that press release went out, not called, she sent a message to us and she said, hey, I heard y'all did this training and helped with this operation. Thank you so much for what you do. She was in her mid-30s. She said, I'm not telling you who I am. It was anonymous. I'm an illegal immigrant. That's why she didn't want to say anything. She said, I'm an illegal immigrant. And this guy would take me and lock me in a trailer, make me perform sex acts on video and stuff for, 2-3 days at a time. He'd just lock me up, give me food and water, take me, and then he would release me. But this guy she's a grown woman, but she didn't have anybody she could call. She had nobody she could call because she's an illegal immigrant. Now, that's not necessarily the way it works. If she was to call law enforcement, it's not like she's going to get deported immediately, but in her mind, that's what she thinks.
Yeah.
So I would say the ones who are targeted the most, kids, because they are they're more easily, it's easier to victimize a child.
Yeah.
And then women, because regardless of what, the Avengers and all that tells you, any chick in this building, if I want to take and put in my truck, I'm going to be able to take and put in my truck if a grown man doesn't stop me.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so I would say females are the most commonly victimized demographic.
How much has the cell phone impacted this industry?
So the example I always use, hey, and you still have this. Don't get me wrong. You still have this. People are taken this way, but a free candy van is not going to pull up to your house and take your kid or even take your wife. Somebody's going to infiltrate their mind by infiltrating their digital footprint, and they'll talk that person right out of your house. The first example I use, look at infidelity with social media that's going even across the church, right? Infidelity has increased tremendously because why? Because it's easy to steal somebody's mind with this, right? They build a relationship with somebody they haven't even seen. How much more a kid? Who's, we as adults, we're dumb. Kids are really stupid. And people get mad when I say that, but your kids, no matter how smart you think they are, they're dumb and they will be tricked. You give them a phone, somebody's going to reach out, they're going to trick them, and they'll talk your kid right out of that house. And then they'll physically take them, or they'll infiltrate your family's life, and before you know it, your kid's giving a credit card number away, giving Venmo accounts, and now they're draining your stuff. We see a lot of that going on. So they're targeting a digital footprnt.
You have kids. You told me you had kids.
Yeah, I got 3 girls.
Three girls. When did you allow your girls to have cell phones?
They don't have phones.
What, do you mind telling me how old your oldest is?
Yeah, the oldest is 9, so they're 8, so they don't need it.
Yeah, sure.
But I wouldn't, and I'll cross that bridge when I get there, but my nephew and my niece have phones, and I've told my sister, and they've been targeted too. We got a buddy who...
Really?
Oh, yeah. We got a buddy on, what is it called? Is it Number Blocks or something? It's some game that kids on. His 6-year-old daughter was being targeted in a messaging room. This guy was sending pictures, and he works on our team, but he's sending pictures in that messaging room. He was sending stuff to this 6-year-old little girl, sexual stuff. So I'll use this example. Would you leave, let's say your kids are 14 and 15 years old. Would you go,
I got a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
Take your 15-year-old daughter down to that nice playground under the bridge in Birmingham, back there behind, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, over by the BJCC.
Right there. Would you leave your daughter out there to play on the playground or go on the BJCC and take off and say, I'll come back to get you in 3 hours?
No.
You wouldn't do it? So that's just one little small section of Birmingham that you wouldn't leave your kid in. Nobody would. Even at age 15, probably even at 16 or 17, you probably wouldn't let your kid go to the BJCC, especially a daughter. When you give them a phone, and parents say, oh, no, I really monitor it. Well, no, you don't. You don't have a clue. These kids know way more about these phones than we do. When you give them a phone, you just gave your kid access to the world and your world access to your kid. You wouldn't leave them under a bridge in Birmingham, but you give them a phone, and now they have access to everybody in the world, every idea that's out there. They can more easily be targeted. There are tools, and some of our guys, if you want to reach out on covenantrescue.org, hey, what tools can we put in place so we know? There are tools that we suggest that will notify you if certain words are said and maybe text messages, or if there's certain sites that are going to. There are tools that you can use to better monitor your kids, and that's what I encourage people to do.
Yeah.
At some point in time, they're going to school, they need to have contact with you, the parent. We don't live in the same time that we used to, where kids ain't really going anywhere. If they do, they're walking across the farm, they're walking down the road. We don't live in that same time. They got to have contact. There are tools you can do to monitor your kids. That's my biggest thing. If they're going to have a phone, monitor them, but don't give them a phone young, because you're giving the world access to them and them access to the world.
What is the number one thing parents can do to protect our kids from sexual predators?
You know, we talked a little bit about this earlier. I won't give the guy's name. You can look him up if you want to. But and I've had people argue this. Oh, this sounds fake. No, all you idiots that want to say, you know, oh, this is, you know, just, you know, blowhard alpha male stuff. You know, it's not. And he said there wasn't a specific demographic. He would look at the child. He would look at a bunch of different things, but there really wasn't a specific demographic he targeted. I just think in his area, it just happened to be more white people. He generally went after boys, not girls, but he still went after girls as well. He said, but the very first thing I would look at, the very first thing would be the father. And if I perceive the father as a threat, I wouldn't go after that child. So I would say, and it wasn't even the mother. He would actually infiltrate mothers' lives. He continues on, I don't normally say this, he continues on the interview saying, especially single moms, who are literally on the edge of a cliff, you know, like just run down, working, kids and everything. He would try to be involved in their lives enough to where he built rapport. And he'd say, hey, look, why don't you go out and spend some time with yourself? I'll stay with the kids. And he's built trust with her. And she's like, you know what? Okay. And so then he stays with the kids, and that's where he would start grooming the kids. The only thing that wasn't, that he said was a deterrent 100% of the time was the father a threat. That's what he looked like. He said, if it was, I wouldn't go after him. And so
If
to
the
me,
father was a threat.
if the father's a threat. So to me, be a threat. If you're a dad, be a threat. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's not some alpha male bull crap. I'm not talking about being able to get in a UFC cage, you know, and knock out, you know, some of the world's best fighters. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you're aloof to the world around you, if you're not in tune with your kid's life, in tune with your kid's social media, in tune with those people who are trying to steal your child's mind, you've got to be in tune with that. If you have daughters, you got to let them know that you love them. You got to let them know that they're dating. But most of the time, we're too lazy to do that. We're very lazy. So as a dad, be a threat. And as a mom, be cognizant that you, regardless of what the world says, you're not the same as a man. And another man's going to look at it and he's going to say, hey, I don't have a dude around that's a threat. Now I'm going to try to slide in there and really win her over. That's just generally what you see.
It's all psychological. It's like you said, it's not the candy in a van type thing anymore.
It's not candy in a van.
Smash and grab type deal.
And being a threat doesn't mean that you're, you know, everybody's, oh, the alpha male idea. You know, it's probably more of a sigma male, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You need to be in tune with the world around you. You need to be in tune with your kids, and you need to be ready to hit somebody in the face with an axe if they show up to mess with your kid. I mean,
Absolutely.
you need to, like, what are your kids worth to you?
Oh.
You know, and so if that's really how you feel, prove it, show it.
Yeah.
As a father, as a mother, you just have to really be cognizant and just realize that you're not threatening. Yeah, you've got to be aware you're not threatening.
Wow. What is the common theme you've seen in the lives of the kids that you'll rescue?
So for us, rescues are fewer and far between because they're harder to come across. Again, we infiltrate the consumer to find the supplier. With that being said, the common theme is they don't have parents. You know, like one girl I can think of, her name was Isabella. She was 15 when she was taken, but she ran away. She ran from her mom and her stepdad. She was being sexually abused by them. I think her mom was in and out of jail, drug issues. Went back to dad and brother. They weren't sexually abusing her, but her dad and her brother were physically abusing her. Again, drug issues, or I think alcohol with dad, drugs with mom, if I remember right. She ran away, got picked up by this dude slinging dope on the street, and he would, you know, he had her. She was a little living girlfriend, but he would also sell her to his buddies, right, for sex acts or whatever. So she was 15. I think we found her, she was 16. She'd been doing that for a year. It might have been 14 to 15, but that is the common thing. They're not kids that have a so our board when we rescue this. Oh wait, can we see the reunification with a family? That doesn't exist. Most of the time, their family is the problem, is the reason that they are in this environment.
Are sexual predator problems the same domestically as they are overseas?
At the 30,000-foot view, yes, right. At the in the reality in the moment, no, right? So the example I like to use, we just literally went to Zambia this year, so I'll use them as most recent overseas work. And we've been to a lot of places, Haiti, all that. War-torn countries are always going to have it, you know, because daddy's off at war, mama's got to take care of babies. We see it in Ukraine a lot. What do you think mama's going to do? You know, there's a reason that the highest paid person on OnlyFans is a woman, because that's the wage gap there. Dudes ain't paying to see other dudes for the most part. They're paying to see women. So what can mama do? She can sell herself, right? Everybody jokes and says it's the oldest profession on the face of the planet. So, and you see that being that family, those kids, that woman, you see that setting them up at at risk of being trafficked. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So that would be more war-torn areas where there's not a justice system and law in place. It's kind of the Wild West. In other areas where you do have law in place, no matter how good or bad it is, Zambia, using them as an example, not so much a war-torn country, but prostitution is legal, 16 and older. So a 16-year-old girl can sell herself. Well, tell me how you're going to tell the difference between a 14, 15, and 16-year-old. A lot of times it's difficult.
Yeah.
You can't. Sometimes even 13, you start seeing it's hard to tell the difference. That's the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it is in Zambia, there is no attempt. There has to be, the physical act has to take place. So if I'm going to get a guy in the country of Zambia for trafficking a child, or for, what do they call it? I can't remember exactly what their charge is. If I think of it in a minute, I will. If I'm going to get a guy in Zambia, I have to watch him. I have to know that this child, these kids are over here being sold or selling themselves, which is commonly what you see. More commonly, they're selling themselves or not being sold. People
Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh, wow.
People will argue with me on that, but more commonly than not, and I've seen
The
this,
13 or 14-year-old girl or boy.
they're selling themselves. The one girl I interviewed, I still have it on my phone right here. She was 12 when she got trafficked. She wound up getting raped, stolen by a South African guy, but she was selling herself because she wanted to go to school and wanted to pay for school. Her parents didn't want to pay for school. They wanted her working there at the house. This is in Zambia. And she set herself up at risk to being taken, and she was taken. But she was selling herself. So at 12. And I see this, we see this stateside and overseas. It's very rare. Only in war zones do we see people really being taken. Again, when you get to other countries where there is some bit of a justice system, it's difficult to take a human being because somebody's going to miss that human being. So all of that being said, without getting too much into the weeds on that, I have to physically watch that, which means I see these kids selling themselves. A guy buys them, takes them to his truck, takes them to a room. They come out. We can arrest them at that point in time. And then there has to be what's required by their law. Defilement of a child, I think, is what their charge is called. Defilement. And then what we have to do is we have to have a DNA match. So the DNA that's in that little girl or little boy has to match the DNA on this guy. Well, you better hope that's the first one of the day, because they've had a lot of cases thrown out where they couldn't tell. There was the DNA in the child was a bunch of DNA, right? And it didn't match the guy that was actually caught, so he gets thrown out.
Wow.
That's generally what you see.
Everything you've said, and I don't know if you realize this, everything you've said comes back to family.
100%.
Do you think that this is why the devil is targeting our families?
100%, man, because the family unit is what deals with this in the most effective way. In the most effective way, the family unit deals with this. Now, that doesn't mean that all families are good. There are some families that are bad, and that's where that's the devil targeting, whether through drugs or alcohol or whatever it is.
Right.
But if that family unit is cohesive, if that's what you have to lean on, then you're going to mitigate this risk a lot. So, for instance, I give a lot of times, I have a niece. She is very loving. She'll run off with a stranger just about, right? Now my girls are not like that. They're very, stranger danger, but my niece, she's not like that. And my brother and his wife, they're working on her for this. But she's so comfortable with me and my other brother, like you have to watch out. She will run up, and she's done it to us. We're sitting there, hey, Uncle Jared, and gives me a hug. She's 4, she might be 5 now. She'll kiss you right on the mouth if you're not careful. You got to turn your head. You got to make sure that you keep your head away from her face, because she will do that. She's very loving, very trusting. And if you see this, though, and you don't know my family, and you see this little girl come up and do that and say, hey, Uncle Jared, and she does that, hugs me and kisses me on my mouth, or unbelievably affectionate, that stands out as something that's odd, right? Nieces are not supposed to kiss their uncles on the mouth. That's just, if anybody here is listening and you think that that's okay, it's not okay, right?
It's not normal,
guys. Don't freaking Joe Biden your kids, snip their hair and all this weird stuff. So, but if you see that, that stands out as something that's odd. It doesn't to my parents or my wife or my brothers and sisters.
You're extremely tight circle.
Because we know, even close friends, everybody knows how Harper is, and they know we get on to, hey, you can't do that, Harper. You have to put those things in place, trying to teach her. But so that's where you actually look for trafficking the most. That's where, what do we look for? Well, you look for those things within those people that you know. You look for, if we know that's not normal, and if I know this family and I see that going on, okay, that stands out. And I don't want to give specific examples that I've seen, but when I started telling people this, because not people don't talk about this normally. They'll
Yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, look for the hungry kid or look for the dirty kid." We got
Right.
no flipping kid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the dumbest.
Don't
thing
see my kids' feet at any point in the day because they're dirty.
yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah, we know these answers. Like,
Yeah.
your sphere of influence. You know, how do we know that something's going on? And I mean, there's been ladies at my church come in and say, "Thank you so much for this. I've seen this, this, and this." And they even show me videos, and I'm like, yeah, that is something to watch for. I'm not saying it is something, but you need to keep an eye on that.
Okay, give me some examples. What are some things that
What I just
like,
mentioned,
yeah,
a little.
yeah,
If we're close friends and you see that overly affectionate niece, you know, or you see my wife says, she says, you know, what she's joking when she says this. I almost don't even want to say it. She said, "Hey, whenever we're at something together, you go to put your arm around me. I'm going to do this right here." Right. So when you see
Nice.
stuff, when you see stuff
yeah.
like that,
Be aware.
you've got to be aware, but it's only in people you know, right? And my wife knows this. If she jokes like that out in public at some event that we're at, people are going to see that and be astonished, right? Even though she's joking with me, all right? I mean, which is why she doesn't do it.
There's times when you can joke.
We
there's
only
times
do
when
this
you
on the
can't.
couch with
Yeah,
each other,
exactly.
right? And that's what I'm talking about right there. So if you know us really well, you know, let's say you know me and my family really
Yeah.
well, and you see those tendencies from my wife, like you know us well enough to say something's going on here, and you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
That's why family's important. That's why community is important, because
Yeah.
we know each other. I can't from the outside come in and level an accusation. That's actually judgment, as the Bible talks about.
Right.
We're not supposed to judge in that manner. Judgment that is good judgment that we're supposed to have, is actually the wherewithal to know that something is not right here. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's the only way I can explain
It's
it.
common sense in a lot of places, but these days common sense is not so
No,
common.
it doesn't exist because again, symbolism without substance. We want to say, "Oh, look at us doing all this over here. Yeah, look for the dirty kid, or look for the person with tracks on their arms." And no kidding. That's what we know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not where this is taking place. It's taking place at the family.
That stuff was there in the 80s, before cell phones, before technology, before all those things.
It's always been there.
It's always been there. But what we have to see now is the things that I mean, in a lot of ways, are unseen in some ways.
And you know, something you mentioned, messages. Read your kids' messages. Have the way to monitor that. Their apps on their phones, all those things. That's going to help you know something's out of place or something's not right.
Right. Let's talk about boys.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the best way that we can raise our boys to be a threat?
Oh, well, I would say the first thing, I mean, this in our culture, it seems like it's starting to swing back, but it's been hard on the American male, you know, like being physical, being a threat is a bad thing. Does that make sense?
It's yes.
And so I would say that's the first thing. Hey, if somebody does this or says something to your sister, knock their teeth down their throat. We'll deal with it after, but mom and dad support you.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, they're not supposed to touch your sister like that or do that. So bring back being masculine.
Yeah.
Right? And also for women, there's nothing wrong with men being masculine and you being feminine. Right?
No doubt.
That's an important thing. We try to blur the lines too much.
Amen.
We can only blur the lines in a culture that allows us to blur the lines. Well, guess what? You go back, you go to Afghanistan to pull out. We helped people out. We only got 1,900 people out of Afghanistan when all that happened after the U.S. government left. There was like half-naked yoga in Kabul. There was, you know, people when open homosexual relationships. Do you know how long that lasted when the U.S. government left?
Wow.
Like 2 weeks. And they were burning those people in Connex boxes. They were killing them quickly. All those women, there was no more half-naked yoga.
No.
They were wrapping them up. They're beating them. And all these beta males who would push for this stuff because they're a bunch of betas as is. Guess what they were doing? They were beat with whips. I watched videos of it. These, you know, media folks and all that. Hey, we need to talk. No,
it's going to be hard to beat people with whips here.
Well, and so what I'm saying is when you.
No, I get it.
It only works in a culture that is protected by that strong
that allows it.
That allows it, and it's protected by that strong influence. And these males are like, yeah, we'll allow it. The example I like to use in Scripture, David was the warrior, and without the warrior, and even Saul, even though he was led astray, right? God was sorry that he made Saul king. Saul was a warrior, mighty warrior. He killed his thousands. David killed his tens of thousands. But what was Solomon? He was the diplomat. The diplomat can never be a diplomat unless, of course, his foundation is built on that of the blood of a warrior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And we see that same thing with God. God is a mighty warrior. Exodus 13:3, maybe, I can't remember. He says he is a mighty warrior. And Isaiah tells us he's a dread warrior. No, Jeremiah tells us it might be Jeremiah 29, tells us he's a dread warrior. He's a fearful warrior, to be afraid of him because he's a mighty warrior. We see the warrior God in the Old Testament, and we see the lamb that was led to the slaughter in the New Testament. Well, why did Israel miss the coming of Christ? Because they were looking for a conquering king, but what did they get? They got a lamb silent and being led to the slaughter. And I'm afraid, and that's the foundation that diplomacy is built on, the diplomacy of Christianity that doesn't have to be furthered with a sword like it was in the Old Testament. It doesn't have to be furthered with a sword, it's furthered with love. However, what is Christ returning as? He's returning as a conquering warrior, a mighty king.
Riding a horse.
Whose train of his robe fills the temple, riding on a horse and blood's going to flow to the horse's mane. So we see, be careful that we don't miss the fact that Christ is coming back as a mighty warrior. And for us, especially as fathers, as we embody Christ, especially for our society, as we try to embody, as Christian men, embody who Christ is, we are called to protect those in our charge. And what is the first? Wife and kids. That's Jared Hudson's most important role. Outside of being a Christian, the eternal, the physical, until the day I die, I'll be a husband and I'll be a father.
That's it.
And that is my most important role God's given me. And I have to physically protect that woman, my wife, Lauren, and those kids. I am called to physically protect them and love them. I'm called to, when they come to me, they're not afraid of me,
right?
Because they know that I'm going to protect them and that there's comfort under the shadow of my wing, just like I have comfort under the shadow of God's wing. We don't teach that. Why they teach boys that?
Why have I understand the cultural and the society thing that we allow, but why have men stepped away from that, you think?
Well, I think that's what we've always done. Look at Adam in the garden. You know, Eve was deceived, which is why, women are not called to lead commonly in Scripture. There's big arguments on that, but I mean, it's just pretty common there. Because she was deceived, Adam disobeyed. And Adam was the first type of Christ. Christ was a type of Adam, right? And so had Adam been obedient, well, he might have been able to intercede to God on Eve's behalf and we would have been okay. But he didn't. What did he do? He disobeyed. And for us, he gave it over to his wife. He gave over dominion of everything, all the animals, everything that he had. He gave it all over because of his disobedience. I think we do the same thing. It's easier to give it over because that's been man from day one.
Yeah,
we just want to give it up. Look, just whatever. Look at Samson.
Yeah,
that's a great example. What did he do? He finally
just gave in.
Woman just
wore him out. Women, quit wearing us out.
Exactly. She wore him out to finally. It's like, okay, just do this, and he cuts his hair off because his eyes poked out, and we see the massive suffering. And I would say that's our greatest sin. We're not willing to toe the line. Jesus was even like, how long do I have to be with you, you sinful generation? Right? We're wearing him out. He didn't turn it over. He said, your will be done, not mine. And he went to the cross for us.
What is the best way that you have found to raise money for Covenant Rescue?
Man, I don't know. If I did, we might not be sitting here talking about raising money.
I've got so many thoughts on how to do this.
So we go around and speak. We work with the government for those appropriations and those different things. I mean, with grants and all that. We work with foundations. The hard thing is there's so much look at what we're doing, and then they're really not doing a lot out there. And for us, it's hard to actually show what we're doing because we're making active cases with law enforcement. So when Covenant Rescue goes in, we got Montgomery County Sheriff's Office we just work with, and you had the Marshal Service and NPD, and we've all of these different things. When we go in and we work, it's not us doing that, but it's us doing that. Does that make sense? Because
you're the coaches. They're the players on the field, but you're the coaches. But all the players are getting the glory, and you're not. You're the coaches that don't get the glory. And
basically, pretty much that's it. And we can't get the glory, and we don't want it. I don't care whose name's on it.
Not saying that you do want it. Yeah.
And I don't care, but that's how we raise. So it's hard to raise awareness and money on that. Like, oh, no, the law enforcement agency's already doing it. No, you're not. I can take you to every law enforcement agency we've been to. We've got letter of recommendations from sheriffs, from federal agencies who say, ain't nobody doing this. They'll tell you that. let's put it this way. When you do find it, like in Genesee County, it's very rare. They would be the only agency that I know who's ever done anything like this. But the other side of it, you got to have successful prosecution. So we just go in and drop a template on them, and we say, hey, run this if you want to run it, change it as you want to change it. Johnson County Sheriff's Office in Indiana, I think they made, since we worked with them in 2019, we made, I don't remember how many arrests we made at the time, maybe 20 over 2 nights of operations. They made like 100. They sent us something a couple of months ago. They made like 147 felony arrests based on this style of operation since then.
So when you say 20 arrests, you did this, you had a sting operation. But what I keep hearing you say is like, you get this one guy that's meeting this one 14-year-old girl. How did you arrest 12? Okay, so you made the comment.
It keeps happening. I mean,
in the same,
like, well, we've had people like, we'll stack them up. We've arrested guys with the agency, and that's something we teach the agency to do as well. You just saw one in Florida. You see all these deputies pile out of the house and tackle that guy that was like a catcher or a pitcher for some baseball team. It was public everywhere. Like, these dudes run out and they're like, boom, form tackle him in the yard.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. The way I brief them, like, hey guys, do everything as if what you're doing is illegal. We are kidnapping people. We don't want anybody to know, because we'll have guys surveil us in the parking lot for 5 hours to make sure it's not the cops. Well, if you got a bunch of cops run out, guess what? That guy goes away.
He leaves.
That's that buck that you want to shoot. That's that buck that's smart, that's letting all these little dumb idiots go out, and you get the 20-year-old kid who's drunk showing up for a 15-year-old girl. Okay, that's all right, great.
It's bad.
It ain't that 40 or 50-year-old dude who's got multiple victims. He's having sex with his own daughter at home. He's locking the woman up in the trailer. That's the person we're looking for. And you don't get that person by being unprofessional. And most of the time when you see these things happen, it's because these law enforcement agencies that run them, they're not professionals. They don't know how to be a professional. We teach them, this is the way you do this as a professional.
Right.
You're really good at drug work. You're really good at prostitution work. You're really good at felony arrest. You're not good at this.
It's a totally different world.
It's a totally different world. So we've had guys just recently, we had 2 guys that we arrested in the hallway with one of the dudes we arrest. So he walks in the door, decoy lets him in, hook him and arrest him, and then we get a call from one of our guys in the other room. Hey, his boy is right here. He just walked past to the Coke machine. The guy comes back. Well, we hook him when he comes back.
Wow.
No, we're hooking us. I mean, you're doing a true undercover operation, and you're not wanting everybody to know what's going on. So that would be that's how you catch multiple of these, because if you don't do it that way, what happens is everybody sees it. Everybody in the parking lot sees friggin', 100 cops run out in the parking lot, arrest a dude, and then run back in. It's not what we want to do. Everybody sees Chris Hansen and his camera and is like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
We don't want that. We don't care about any glory. We don't care about it. All we care is that the law enforcement agency builds a successful case on the front end. The case culminates when the dude shows up.
Right.
And make the arrest. And the prosecutor's happy with this case because now we can prosecute it and get successful sentencing, whether it's 1 month down the road or 18 months.
And then keep rinsing and repeating if you can.
Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
Wow.
Rinse, repeat.
How can people find you guys? I know we talked about you're on social media.
Yeah.
Has social media helped you guys at all? I mean, is it a positive thing for y'all? Or is it just one of those necessary evils?
It's just one of those necessary evils.
Sure.
Yeah. Covenantrescue.org.
Okay.
Go to that. Follow us on any of those things. They could follow me personally, and I talk more about stuff on my personal thing. Because the organization is strictly focused on our human trafficking operations. It's very limited what we can put out, buy swag, all that stuff. Donate if they can, but you can follow me personally at I don't even know what my website's called. I got the Shooting Institute. You can look at that, but it's jaredhudson.com or thejaredhudson.com or some junk like that. And so I will do speaking engagements where I will come in and talk about these things and even other things. And but if you follow me personally, you can see that and hear more probably about what we've done.
Correct.
And what we're doing. But the organization, follow them. But there's not, it's very boilerplate. Hey, this is our organization. It's not a lot of what we're having this conversation right now.
Gotcha. If someone wants to donate, covenantrescue.org, just covenantrescue.org. Anything you buy there goes to support them. Last thing before we leave, what would you tell the people out there just in order to help stop all this crazy sex trafficking stuff that's going on? What would be your number one message to anyone watching or listening?
Yeah, that's good. I don't know which camera to look at.
Either
I
one
guess
of
that
them
camera
live,
right
yep.
there. Yeah, any of these cameras running. I would say the biggest thing for you as the community, as public to look at, is be aware of your kids, be aware of your nieces and nephews, your sphere of influence, the people at your church. be aware with your community. The thing is, you want to change the world, but you don't make up your bed in the morning. I think it's something Jordan Peterson said one time or whatever. And Admiral McCraven would say, hey, make your bed. That's what he talked about. Deal with your things. It's a scriptural principle. If you're faithful in the little things, then you'll be given much more. So first, deal with your stuff. Deal with your community, your family, your house. And once you've dealt with there, then guess what? Other things will present themselves. Don't look at it at the big picture. Look at how can I fix my life. The scriptural principles also, don't worry about the log in the speck in your brother's eye when you got a log in
your own eye. Yeah.
Deal with the things around you. And when you deal with those things around you, then you can more effectively see to deal with those other things. That would be my encouragement of how you can impact human trafficking. And it's not going to be impacted completely until Jesus comes back, because it's just sin.
It's just sin.
It's just sin.
Oh, thank you. Jared, thanks so much. This has been great.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks.